Well, Red Gypsy asks, can I describe a bit about the open money concept in the meantime? So I think having nothing better to do for a few minutes, I might as well. That the concept of open money is that money is essentially a social declaration, and we all have voice. We can, as individuals, as organizations, groups, express our opinion and the value of transactions and issues with other people. I see an incoming call on my voice phone, that old thing, and it's my friend, so I better check with him. Excuse me. Okay. Ernie? Yes, sir. Are you on the network? I see. I will touch you in as a standard user then. I'm just going to go to the switchboard. Are you logged up already? Okay. Try a dial in then as just a normal user on 646, and then when I see you, I'll bring you up. Okay. Bye. Excuse that minor interruption. This is a technical development. It's me just getting Ernie online by another means. Red Gypsy. So what is open money? Well, in the simplest terms, money is the stuff that doesn't really exist that we swap to get the stuff that really does. When a loaf of bread comes from the supermarket to me, when I give you a haircut, when you fix his teeth, the act is a real thing, and the act is generally accompanied in the economic sphere with a monetary transfer that goes in the other direction. I give you something, you give me a piece of money. The supermarket gives me some bread, I give them a piece of money. Now, the piece of money we've been using for the last 10,000 years or something, or well, no, 2,000, all money has been supposed to be valuable in itself, and over the last 400 or 500, the money has been government issue, banking issue, legal tender, stuff that is supposed to be of value because it's jealously maintained by a power authority structure, and we the poor punters get to use it. Well, that's fine as far as it works, but that's a very closed money. They make it, they issue it, they control it, we juggle it. That's the name of the game. I'm not going to argue about that. All I'm just saying is that in addition to closed money of that nature, we can have open money. Essentially, I can say to you, thank you for the haircut. That was worth $50 of my time and energy. And so I will declare a credit of $50 of some money to you, some virtual money, to your account, which you can then spend with other people who would accept that virtual money. So if there is a tribe of us, a connectivity, a group of us, you, me, and 5 other gypsies of different colors, who are willing to say, yeah, we'll do an RG money, then the money that I spend on you that puts me 50 negative, you are 50 positive. You can spend it with another person in that network, who can spend it with another person, and it moves around in different scales and sizes. You might spend 20 here, 30 there. And essentially, we are just bouncing up and down in a little network of scores. We are shifting relative position in a set of relationships. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Sometimes she's down, sometimes she's up. It comes and goes. Open money is the capacity that we have to do that. That's all that open money really is. Now, it can be done by voice. It can be done by marks on the wall, carvings on the trunk of the tree in the middle of the forest. It could be done by 1,000 different ways, 1,000,000 different ways of keeping score. But the key point is that if we see that money is a method we can use to keep score between us of the gifts, the values, the exchanges, then a bad deal. Oh, somebody's trying to get on air. We'll let him in. Caller is muted. We are now going to unmute this caller. And I think this means that is number 1. Are you on air?
Number 1 is here.
Sounds like Ernie. Ernie, we made
I am number 1. I am number 1.
Now, it would help, Red Gypsy, if you could confirm for us that you hear Ernie and Michael at almost the same levels, or not. What is the sound quality like here? Are we matching? Does Ernie sound as good or as bad as Michael, or vice versa? I'm checking with Red Gypsy here because Red Gypsy is on the Skype, not the Skype chat. She is on the BlogTalkRadio chat, the flash chat, and occasionally types something in response. And yeah, hearing you both fine, no problem. Thank you, Red Gypsy.
Oh, good.
You see that little piece of information there, you see, in some circumstances, could have been the difference between a magnificent production that millions of people heard or another technical failure where nobody would listen to us. So
and we could. Yes.
So we could credit Red Gypsy a few techie blips or some currency constructed, declared, convened in the open money space. Now, you see, open money space is just the opportunity to do all this, of course. And it's absolutely unimpeded. It's a commons. It's a philosophical concept. It's social possibility. It's a political act. Then you've got to get to the point of a technical delivery platform that's appropriate. And as I say, that could be the tree in the middle of the forest and a carving knife. But it could also be a network of servers with addressing systems and name authentication processes where I know when I fire out a transaction crediting Red Gypsy of wherever with so many units of such and such a currency, then at the other end of this dumb network, there will be smart consequences. The network's very dumb. It's just going to be a method of routing acknowledgements of value received, putatively so. And not just value received. Once you have one of these networks up and you have a naming and a distinction systems, the ability to distinguish what it is you're talking about. Here we're talking about dollars. Here we're talking about time. Here we're talking about reputation points. Here we're talking about the weather. You know, we can give the weather points. It's been a 6.3 day for me today, weather-wise. You know? Set up scoring parameters, set up dimensions, report on them, track, record. Because the world is really a series of events, some of which we record, some we don't. Sometimes it's useful to record, sometimes it's deadly to record, don't bother. But why not have that choice? And open money is the space of the choice to track and record what it is you think is important. That's of anybody who thinks what you think is important or how you are collaborating with each other. That's all there is to that. So there you go. That was open money in a brief nutshell. Probably about 7 or 8 minutes of that. Hope it didn't answer all the questions because, frankly, everything we do with open money should really open. You are disconnected. Hello? Who has logged in using this account? Did somebody else Meme Pro in there?
Actually, Danny, I did.
You logged in as Meme Pro.
I did.
Well, I can probably log into the chat show as co-host. I'm going to try that little button on this thing. See if this will make me.
I'm now getting both. I'm hearing a latent.
Yeah. Well, you would do. Yeah, if you've got 2 channels going up there, you are definitely confused and confusing. So I think you ought to either come in as the host, in which case I would. Well, no, I think that's not good. Once I've got the host thing going, I'd rather keep it that way. Can you? I'm going to text here. Testing text. All right, Meme Pro. I can type into the chat. How about you, Arnie? Where are you now?
I'm here, but you've dropped me from the Meme Pro connection.
In what you mean, in text or in the voice?
No. That's the reason I tried to log in was because I couldn't do the chat. So now I'm still in as BTR guest.
You should be able to find the chat on the top page, isn't it? On our show page.
Well, no, I found the chat okay.
But you couldn't
the
type
problem
into
was that, I couldn't contribute to the chat because I wasn't logged in. So I tried to log in as MemePro.
Ah, yes, I see. And you log in and you are MemePro.
Yeah. So I think
I'm
going to have to pull the plug. Would it drop you off?
Well, it might well do. What I suggest we do is, thanks for it, Gypsy. Have a good night. Go, dinner is ready. Have a good one. Thank you for your help getting this thing going. Okay, you've gone, Ernie. I see.
Okay, I'm still here. I'm still here as a guest.
Okay. Now, I'm willing for you to log in, and it will knock me off that. How about that? Try that.
Well, wait a minute. But why? But it's going to log you off.
Well, but I don't need to be in the Blog Talk chat. I don't need to be in that. I'm far too busy to be dealing with that. I'm going to have to deal with the switching as it is. So I'll leave you with the text chat so that we can bash
well, I'm going to drop off.
Eventually.
I'm going to drop off the guest thing then.
I don't think you need to all right,
yes,
okay,
I do.
try that.
Otherwise, I get a double.
All right. That means we'll have two hosts logged in. I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
Well, I'm a caller, or at least I'm the host on this show, and we have a caller. We have now two callers trying to get in. Is anybody hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's Guillaume.
Anna's hearing me, and okay, all right. You hang that up, Ernie.
I'm here. Hi, Guillaume.
Hello.
Good. Well, this is getting better. We've got at least that much working. Two people have managed to find us. Guillaume, Ernie, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Good. Well, then, technically, we've got something going, and presumably anybody else who calls in becomes part of it.
Yeah, right.
And presumably we are live to air at this point. That is, every part of our immortal speech is being recorded for the podcast of the future. I think that's useful to know.
So, is this it? Just the three of us?
At this point, yeah, probably.
Okay. Well, I put together a quick presentation.
Okay.
So let me share this.
Thank you. Well, I am opening your slide share presentations of open money acknowledgements, and we are looking.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully some other will join. So the problem with these open wealth acknowledgements may not be the right word, but the main problem I'm trying to solve is how do we, if I do something that has value to someone or to an individual or organization, how do I get that value acknowledged? How do I get my contribution acknowledged? Whether that means that the receiving organization owes me something or not. I want to be able to just make sure that they are acknowledging it. Maybe I want to be able to advertise that to my social network. So that's the problem.
I'm hearing this as sort of presenting an invoice in some way. You've committed an act, you've completed a service, a provision of something, and you're now asking for another party to give it acknowledgement.
Well, it's even before that. It's actually putting the invoice on the web in a way that can be found and aggregated. Can you? Alan is trying to join, so can you let him in?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Glad somebody's looking after the show. Where we got to? I got to find. Here it is. And Alan, I hope this is Alan.
Hello.
Alan, are you speaking? Alan is here.
Hello.
Good. All right. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Right.
So, Alan, I was talking about, I wanted to talk about, I sent a presentation in the links in the chat. So if you want to click on that link and go to my SlideShare presentation, you can take a look at it. So again, the problem is, I think the easiest example is I did something for a charity, and I did something for an hour. I went and cleaned up the community park. I spent 4 hours doing that. I want that to be acknowledged somehow. Doesn't mean that they owe me something, but I just want them to issue something that can be accounted later on, or I can advertise, and I can advertise to the public on my website, on my blog, on my social network in general, for people to see that I've done this. So I have a slide on the model. It starts on the left with the giver or the receiver, either of the two parties. But let's do this with the giver.
Mm-hmm.
The giver is going to submit an acknowledgement to some sort of service provider, and it could be the service provider could be that party as well. It doesn't matter.
Okay, can I have a little clarification here? When we say giver, are we talking the giver?
I'm sorry? Hello?
Has my microphone gone? Am I audible?
Yeah, but it was breaking up.
Okay. The old problem. Okay. Guillaume, I needed a clarification whether the giver here is the giver of the event or the giver of the recognition cycle.
It's the giver of the event. It's the giver of the wealth. It's
okay,
my example is the person who spent 4 hours doing some community gardening.
Mm-hmm.
So that person is going to submit that. They're going to enter a form. We can, or they're going to tweet in a certain format, or enter a form, or publish something on their blog. And the service provider, whether it's a service provider like Twilors or blog software or dedicated software for these types of acknowledgement, is going to issue this acknowledgement. And the only thing it's going to do is just put it somewhere on the web and somehow authenticate the party. And not much than that. So if you can host your own software to issue your own acknowledgements if you want, but it's not going to have much value, obviously, if that issuer or service provider is unknown. So you probably are going to use a more well-known, recognized service, just like you use, there are a variety of solutions. Some people could use their own blog system. Some people could use a hosted system. The point is that you're publishing that on the web, and the only reason for having a service provider is that it's going to transform your acknowledgement in a format that can be easily propagated and aggregated. So if you, unfortunately, my wording has gone here, I think, but after the giver sent this acknowledgement to the service provider publish it on the service provider website. The service provider notifies the aggregator, just like today, when you post a blog post, the aggregating systems are notified. The aggregator retrieves the acknowledgement and aggregates the acknowledgement. So there's going to be a number of aggregators, potentially, just like the number of blog aggregators. And on the other side, I have my service provider, which is essentially an agent, and it's subscribing to the aggregator. And so my receiver is using the service provider as an agent. Just like today, I can go to my blog administration and I can check whether anybody has commented or referenced my blog post. So similarly here, I would be able to, this could be just a blog post, essentially. That's what I mean. But so I'm going to see, okay, who has submitted an acknowledgement in which I am involved, and so the service provider of the receiver is going to present to the receiver the giver acknowledgement. So the receiver is going to be able to see, okay, someone is saying that they gave me something. So in this case, it could be the Community Garden Association. And obviously, they can just discard it as saying, well, this is not true, or, we've never seen this guy. They could lie. Or they could issue a receiver acknowledgement. And the similar mechanism would follow. But the receiver acknowledgement would reference, just like you reference in a payment, you reference the invoice number. The receiver acknowledgement would reference the giver acknowledgement, so that the two would be linked. And again, at this point, I'm not talking about, not necessarily talking about an acknowledgement that would become a liability for the receiver. It could just be, okay, you've contributed to this charity, thank you very much. So more of a gratification, more of a gratitude, if you want. So it really depends on the underlying currency, if you want, or whatever we call it, how we what types of wealth we're talking about, what types of acknowledgements we're talking about. The general mechanism is this one. Whatever we're acknowledging, whether these acknowledgements are leads to a liability or an indebtedness of some sort. So the aggregator is going to aggregate all these things, and some accounting service accountant are going to compute balances. So if we are operating in if you are using currencies or units of value of some sort, the giver could say, okay, I gave you 1 hour of my time, you owe me $40. The party could acknowledge it as, okay, I owe you $40, and then the balance would be minus 40 for the receiver minus plus 40 for the party for the giver. But it could be also for hours, right? So the giver could say, okay, I gave you 1 hour, and I just gave it to you. I don't ask you for you to owe it to me. So it would be a non-binding, non-indebting agreement. And the receiving party would at least say, oh yeah, you did it, you gave it to me. I just acknowledge it. Maybe someone else in the community want to reward you for this, for being such a nice person, but I'm not going to be able to pay it back to you. I'm not going to pay it back to you myself. I'm not going to reciprocate it myself. And these acknowledgements could be even more, non-symbolic, or they could be just, posting a video of some sort, saying, okay, well, I received great service from you, thank you. Here's a video of my experience talking about it, and the receiver acknowledging it. So that's a very loose framework, but the idea is to support a variety of wealth acknowledgement, whether they are simply currencies, as Alan and Arthur and Eric would talk about, or whether they are money in the sense of, if a flow is done in one way, it has to be reciprocated in the other way. So I think this would work in all these cases, and it would work on the web using the existing blogging infrastructure. So it would not be real time, but until something like XMPP is widely adopted and everybody has is able to use that, it could be used. In terms of the basic properties, that's my next slide. Do you have any question on this model slide, or on the general problem that I'm trying to solve here?
Just a clarification from my point of view, the cycle for the receiver SP, service provider website, is that they are updated through the aggregator, and then they may or may not send recognition to the giver, www. That's
yes.
the connection. So that's a consequent. The cycle is through service provider to aggregator to service provider, and then whatever follows from that does so.
Yes. And the service provider on the left, the aggregator in the middle, the accountant on the top, and the service provider on the right could all be the same system.
Yep.
But they all could be different. And you could have multiple service providers for a given party, multiple aggregators, multiple accountants accounting for things differently. So it's, and ultimately a third party would be able to, go to the accountant of their choice and say, okay, what's the balance for this party in this currency or
system would be our goal.
I'm sorry?
The word system would probably be our broader word than currency. Flow, currency, money, they're becoming a lot of overlap going on at the moment. And generally speaking, I think that it's probably appropriate to say accounting system or system of record or something like that as a binding element in some such statement. In which currency are we processing this item of record? Is it a U.S. dollar? Is it a San Francisco dollar? Is it a time bank hour? Is it a dimension of the weather? There are innumerable systems through which this from, to, on which date statement can be recorded. And I think the term account system is broadly inclusive of flow, currency, money, vector.
Yeah, the idea is that, and that's I think that's inspired from the discussions with Alan, Eric, and Arthur, and also discussions with Jeff, which is that if there is an event occurring somewhere, it may be accounted in different ways by different people, and today we account them in dollars, but they could be accounted in a variety of they could be viewed. Different things could be viewed in that single transaction, different flows. Some could argue that, okay, if I sell you something, actually you brought me something. I don't know. So there are, or that if you buy a polluting truck, that you are contributing to pollution, which should be accounted. So some will account, some will not. But it should not be up to the it should not necessarily be up to the initiating party to decide how it's going to be accounted, and others might want to account things slightly differently. But ultimately, people will be free to choose which accounting service they care about, and so that's my third party at the top. I can pick an accountant, and so the accountant is the accounting system, but this is more of a distributed system of creating records, I guess. So my next slide is the basic properties. And I'm getting a lot of noise, Michael. I think it's you. I don't know if you're touching your microphone. But so the basic properties. I don't know if anyone else has any question on this slide from before I move on to the next. And again, it's because this is I just put that together in 10 minutes just to kickstart a conversation around that. Alan?
I think I understand what you're doing here.
Okay, so the next slide on the basic properties of these acknowledgements. So the first one is a URI of the permalink, just like you have a permalink for a blog post. You want to be able to uniquely identify it on the web. And when it was posted and who posted it, and whether it's a gave to or received from, because either the giver or the receiver could initiate the process that we described, and whom it was gave to or given to or received from, a reference if there is an existing acknowledgement that you want to refer to, and what. And so the what at this point I don't define, but it could be a number and a currency, like a dollar-based currency. Could be an hour. Could be a photo saying, "Oh, I had a great time," and just something like as non-symbolic as a picture. So it could be a lot of different things here. But I'm not really concerned at this point with that. I'm more concerned about the general framework for how these things are published on the web, how they are acknowledged by both parties, and can feed a system of accounting. As far as an example, that's my last slide. It could be, it's very simple, right? I'm acknowledging that I received an hour of good experience from a musician, and that musician then in turn acknowledges that giving 1 hour of good experience to me. And this acknowledgement on his side, on her side, could be done automatically. And then some accounting system might say, well, this is actually, I'm going to count this as now Guillaume owes something to that musician or not. Simply just saying, okay, well, this musician provided 1 million hours of, over the last, 5 years, provided 1 million hours of good music to other people, which, is something that today is not accounted, but is, could be accounted. And the second is the reverse, essentially. So this should work for actually a lot of different things, even like votes or comments or on media, like a video. If I can just you can see YouTube in a way as being both the service provider of the giver, the service provider of the receiver, the aggregator, and the accountant. They all do this. It's in one system. Everything is done. But if the stars on various acknowledgements, votes, etc., were available in a given format, others could aggregate them in different ways. So that's what I wanted to kind of start the discussion with. I just feel that this is good. This would be a good, very simple foundation. There is existing work on this topic. What Jeff did is very similar to this. I think what the meta-currency guys are, what they are doing, there's some similarities, and obviously, this could be used for open money. So for systems where if I give you something, then I get back something in return, which and somehow in some ways entitles me to spend it somewhere else, if provided some other person accepts it. So for monetary systems, but it could work also for just reputation systems where maybe a restaurant or a hotel might be interested to give a free dinner or free lunch or free room to someone who has contributed a lot to their community or to the world, or a musician that has given a lot of good concerts or in the country and can prove it this way. Or exactly, a filmmaker. So yeah, so a filmmaker at the end of the movie could say, all right, I'm not asking you to pay, but at least I'm asking you to, go there and, or tweet or SMS or whatever. And here's my URI, whether it's an email or an actual link, to acknowledge that you've got, 1 hour of or 2 hours of interesting educational time, and that's how we can account for it. You can account in the way you want,
okay,
and yeah.
It sounds to me, Guillaume, like an event description.
Michael, sorry to interrupt, but Robert, have you got Robert online?
I can now bring Robert online. I beg your pardon.
Okay, good. Just wanted to flag that.
Robert, are you receiving? Can we hear you, Robert? You're live now on, or somebody is live. just opened the line to somebody calling from an 862 area code. Oh well, maybe they've gone. Maybe they've got nothing to say. And maybe I didn't let Robert in yet. Anybody know? No?
Well, I just saw him. He's on the. Do you have your chat window open? Can you see?
I got the switchboard up. I'll go to
No, but the chat window. Robert came in about 5 minutes ago, and says finally got in. I can see the presentation. What is the best way to talk? Skype or via the click to talk button? I can hear you.
Yeah. Well,
and I see him in the list.
Yeah, but I don't know that I can make him talkable. There's no switch that I've got here that seems to allow that.
I think he's going to call in.
Calling in might be the better way. I think a block between. I'm not seeing anything that says help or allow or anything. I've got.
Okay.
Simple.
Okay, well, let's. There are quite a few people on this call, but not joining. Hello. So, yeah, Michael, you were saying this is more of an event recording system.
Yeah, that's my feeling about it's the fact that it's the what. You know, was it an hour of music? Was it a load of dirt? Was it haircuts? Was it being a great singer or something? You know, it's a statement by one person in relationship to a receiver, but it doesn't necessarily relate to any currency transaction. No money necessarily moves. There isn't necessarily even a profound measure. The measure might be 1 hour of fun.
Yes,
so that's
but the idea is to have something that can be used for non-monetary, non-binding acknowledgement as well as monetary binding and indebting acknowledgements. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is, the idea is to just, to say that today there is as much potential on the web there's a lot of room for non-monetary acknowledgements, and that's what we see the most of today on the web. And so bridging these with the monetary ones seems to be valuable to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just sort of looking at this. I mean, just to kind of reiterate what you said, it seems like the currency part of it or the game part of it happens somewhere else, like on a third party somewhere. So the stream of data that's being produced is just simply what's happening, and and then that's being aggregated and calculated and sifted through in various ways according to rules elsewhere, and people can choose where they want their data to be sifted through and calculated. So I like that.
Yes.
No, we dropped a couple of callers.
Guillaume, I'd like to go back to that that issue with acknowledging the filmmaker or the musician. Why, if there are multiple free open source currencies available to people, would they not pay with a currency? I mean, it seems to me that Alan, as a filmmaker, would be much better off being paid for the value that he has created, rather than just getting a nod.
I'm back. Sorry, something happened. I don't know what it is. Ernie, I didn't hear what you said, the first part of what you said.
Okay. Thinking about the issue of the filmmaker, the acknowledgement of the gift that the filmmaker and the musician has given. With free open source currencies available to all, why wouldn't they prefer to get paid in a currency rather than just a nod?
Well, I think I'm thinking in terms of adoption here. I think that clearly if you ask people to pay in our dollars, they won't. Or a lot of them will not. So I'm seeing this as a transition, if you want, from if you ask people to acknowledge, that's a first step that it feels like it doesn't cost them anything. And over time, you can make these more and more harder and harder if you want. So in other words, make these acknowledgements more and more binding. I don't think that I don't know how you can put in place a system where musicians will get some sort of payment in some other currencies if it's not. I mean, it has to be accepted. You need to have merchants. You need to have businesses that are accepting it. And you need to have enough of these, because if there is only one, then all the musicians are going to rush to that one. So it's really not going to have much value if they all bring their currency to that one. So I think a first step could be to say, let's just have people acknowledge their good experience, and maybe have a few businesses somewhere providing rewards for those that have provided the most benefit to the community. And that would be a first step. And over time, they will say, well, we can give more. This is not. I mean, this is what's actually going on right now in games like Foursquare in San Francisco and New York. You have these games where people, checking at different places, and based on different bars and restaurants and where different locations, geographical locations, and based on how many times they've checked in, they get badges, recognitions, which are not really quantified. They're just little badges that you collect. And for each place, each location, there is a mayor badge, and only one person can have it. Obviously, underlying this, there is a point system, but the point system is not really visible. So what you only see is that, there is a mayor, and there is only one person being the mayor for each location. So everybody is trying to compete to become a mayor of various places in San Francisco, Portland, New York, and other cities in the U.S.
I'm the mayor of a few places right now.
Yeah, so what's happening is that some businesses have realized that, well, that's cool, I'm going to reward the mayors. So they're starting to see in some bars and restaurants in San Francisco and in New York, places saying, we'll give free drinks to the mayor. And so it's interesting because it's not something that the mayor can accumulate. Obviously, there's only one, and you can get free drink at a place, but you cannot, get free drinks for your friends. So it's more of a privilege in a way, and it's a gift. So there's no exchange, there's no guarantee. So what I'm saying is that I think this is a very soft way to bring. So over time, what you might see is more and more monetary value. In other words, more and more promise to actually get something when you reach a certain status, which would become money. Right now, it's not really money, but
well, okay.
I find
just to
this
be the
fact very
devil's advocate, just to be the devil's advocate, though, is I can see it going in the exact opposite direction, where you get people gaming the system in order to become the mayors or whatever of this place and that place, and getting the occasional free drink, but really nothing significant happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Foursquare is not meant to be significant. Foursquare is meant to be a social game for, young kids in hip cities.
Right.
So it's not.
Well, and I guess that's where.
What is interesting is the mechanism and how this mechanism could be used for other things. For instance, for volunteering or for, if you could have a.
Sorry, can you hear me, Guillaume?
Yes.
I can hear you, Michael, but you're faint and you're breaking up.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, which I don't understand, because before the show, you were strong and your microphone wasn't breaking up.
Okay. Well,
I mean, are you doing something differently now?
I think it may have been a crossover with the flash chat that showed
Okay,
up
you're okay now.
All right. Well, there we go. Then I killed the flash chat. And
All right. There you go. Good.
All right. Okay. What I'm getting from this, Guillaume, is that we're looking at what I call an event descriptor. It's like I saw a shooting star go across the sky. I might say, look, a shooting star. And that's my statement, event characterized in this structure that you're offering here. Now that, for the thing like you did some work in the park, it could be you saying I did some work in the park. It could be the park board saying Guillaume worked in the park. So those are what I'd call event descriptors. And I see the syntax that you put up here as an elementary event descriptor. Are we in accordance on that?
Yes.
Okay. So
it's a mutually acknowledged event.
Yes.
So it's not a shooting star. It's your second example is more appropriate, because I don't really care about the shooting star, but I care more about getting some contributions I've made to others.
Okay, so you're looking at this give me a payback deal at some point. That's what you want, this event descriptor to be effective at the level of induction.
Still breaking, Michael. You're breaking up. You're breaking up and you're faint. So I don't know what the problem is.
Now that would be the microphone again. Damn microphone.
I guess so.
Yeah. Am I still breaking and loud?
You're okay right now at the moment. Maybe if you don't move.
Angle to this thing, that might work. Okay. So there are these event descriptors. Now, of course, we want event descriptors to lead on to something significant. And that might be the mayor getting a free drink in the bar, or it might be something more significant. But it is just somebody saying of something as a matter of record. And so, for instance, the shooting star going by might be important if I'm participating in an astronomical survey, or I'm doing bird watch counting. I say that I have seen 4 yellow-bellied chars, or something, and I state that to the bird count. You see, so these become markers of events, which is terrific.
Well,
now, when we talk
again,
about monetizing,
I'm talking about givers and receivers. I'm not talking about storytellers. I'm talking about people doing things, contributing things. So I'm not interested about counting the birds. I'm talking about I did something to you, I provided something to you, I gave something to you, or to a group, or to a community.
Or to a
I
thing.
want this to be acknowledged, or to a thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It could be a bird
Earth.
count. A bird count is a thing.
Yes,
so this,
but
I mean, your syntax is totally appropriate for what I'm talking about, as well as what you're talking about.
yes, but I have an intent, which is to not use it for reporting.
And I have an intent, which is that this should be used as well at a deeper level to create compatible monetary transactions, because that's when the rubber hits the road. That's when it's real. If people get rewards or satisfaction or acknowledgement or further action as a part of this, then we're moving into reality. Frankly, I think the four square stuff is a trivial pursuit, significant in some respects, but it's hardly relevant given the way the planet's going at the moment. It's an indicator, it's a lead, but it's trivial. I'm with Ernie on this. I'm interested in things that actually move towards substantive events and substantive recognition. For instance, we're using SFA in this context. Each of us on our local project is saying, I, Michael, submit for acknowledgement that in this month I did so much work, and I'm submitting for acknowledgement to the Open Money Development Project. So that would be, a delivery of time and energy submitted by me, my statement alls. So that would be compatible with yours. Mm-hmm.
Yes, what I'm describing here, the goal is to include that, is to say there are some submissions that I'm going to just get an acknowledgement for, and nothing else, because I'm not asking for people to acknowledge that they owe me something.
When I say acknowledgement, I mean pay.
Yes.
I don't talk about owe. Certainly never talk. Never talk about owe. I never talk about owe in open money, because there is no owing in open money. There is payment.
Well, if you pay, isn't a payment an acknowledgement that someone else is owe you something?
No, if I pay somebody in open money, it means that I am acknowledging the value of what I have received and conferring value on another through my promissory process. Payment has been made.
Well, this is very similar, but I guess what we are, what I'm arguing here is so I think what I'm describing here is quite compatible with what you're saying, because.
And I totally want to back up Guillaume here and say, if you're talking about an event descriptor of some sort, describing things that happen, then sort of ex post facto looking at that and deciding, in the short term, well, that perhaps entitles me to a free drink at a bar somewhere, and in the longer term, those same event descriptors, when different rules of the game are applied, could mean that I have a positive account balance somewhere where that allows me to receive goods and services in a more quid pro quo kind of a way. So I don't see that this is like mutually exclusive at all. I see what Guillaume's talking about here is able to include both the and also nicely have an evolutionary arc, perhaps, between them, or allows different people to be in different spots in terms of what's their comfort level with participating with open money, and what's their where do they want to be in this? What kind of games do they want to be playing by? So I think this. It's certainly not exclusive, though, to a less approach or anything like that. That's right, Guillaume, right? It's sort of both and?
Yes, it's not what, I want, my goal is how do we get substantive rewards for people doing things for the commons, for people doing things that have not necessarily a market value, but that have a commons value. How do we get people rewarded for this? And that's difficult. So
actually, I don't think it's difficult at all. In fact, that's essentially what we're doing with Community Way here in the Valley.
I understand.
So, but I don't understand. What I don't understand is what you think is the difficult part of it.
Well, it's difficult. I think that's a big discussion. It's difficult because how do you measure the given the contributions of people? Different people will have different ideas of what these contributions are.
But that's a negotiation. It's a negotiation and it's an agreement. And
what I'm saying is, to me, to me, you need to have a unit of measure of the contribution of each of the person. That unit is the currency, and in a market mechanism, it's very easy to, at least it's not that it's very easy, but it's people actually trust the market mechanism as putting prices on things. It's not the same for things that are part of the commons. So I think the putting price on things that for which there is no market is difficult, and I don't think everybody puts the same price on it. When you say we're going to create a currency, you're saying all of us put the same price on it. Let's all agree that these things have a value. And I think that is,
we're not saying the same price, Guillaume.
Well, the same measure, the same unit of measure, which is so.
But it's based on the capacity. In the case of Community Way, where businesses are the issuers of the Community Way dollars, it's measured in dollars, but each business has a different capacity to earn, and they issue the dollars, the Community Way dollars, on their capacity to earn them, to redeem them. That's how the money is created. And it's not. And nobody that we have talked to has really had a problem with that. They understand it, they get it. Community Way dollar, okay. These businesses will accept them at a portion of a sale. 50% in a restaurant, 20% in a grocery store.
Well, I've talked to businesses in San Francisco. They don't understand it, and I've told Michael that a lot of people don't understand it, and I think I've explained it, and quite well. So
some of us speak to some of the businesses in San Francisco. Then must be a language problem of some sort.
Well, hold on a second. Before we get too off on that tangent, I think it's really important to distinguish between currency design and platform design. So, and both are valid discussions. I know certainly we could probably debate endlessly currency design and all the subtleties therein. In terms of what Guillaume's putting on the table here, though, I see this more in terms of a platform, and I think that's a different set of criteria by which you would evaluate a platform.
No, hold on, Alan. I don't think we're in any difficulty with that at all. I think perhaps the issue here is that Guillaume's given us an event designator recorder, an event thing, which is not de facto quantifiable because, as he says, prices, values, considerations, evaluations are totally arbitrary. When I say I've improved the climate of my community in some way, who says how much and what's it worth? Well, but I can say I've improved it.
That's a valid discussion to be having. I think what I hear Guillaume saying is that that aspect of it is handled through the fact that this is a mutual acknowledgement. It's not simply me saying, I saw a shooting star or something like that. It's a mutual acknowledgement of a relationship, which is.
But then if you're talking about the two-way, which is A says to B and B confirms A's remark, yeah, but I don't hear that in this protocol. All I see in the protocol is AB.
Well, Michael, if you have, what you're describing is I give you something, you give me something. What I'm describing is
No, I'm not asking for that. What you've got here on basic properties, permalink, when, who, gave, whom, reference what. Okay? That's a one-way transfer. That's a one-way statement. And it's a one-way event. And that's great. I think it's very important to have these basic properties established.
Yes.
Now, the next levels, of course, of making them into something that's significant, tangible, monetized, socially effective, valuable, that's a whole different story. But the basic properties you've given us here are the parameters necessary to describe uniquely an event as described by one party and presented to the other.
Well, am I correct in reading in these specifications here that, a third-party aggregator would also be able to aggregate the acknowledgement of said transaction, so it does become more A to B, B to A? For instance, like there's some things for which, I wouldn't necessarily need to acknowledge if 1,000 people saw my film and liked it. Like, oh yeah, great, thanks. Go to each of them and be like, so for that particular circumstance, there probably wouldn't need to be mutual recognition of that event. However, in the case of, in other cases, maybe there would be. You see what I'm saying? So, I think that what I'm seeing here is flexible enough that it could accommodate for both. I actually see a somewhat different ontological question here, and I'm not framing this as a criticism, just as a question, and that is a little bit, Guillaume, what we got into discussing in San Francisco around whether, the event, measuring an event precedes the rules of a game, or whether the rules of a game precede an event. And, that might be a persnickety philosophical debate, but I think when we're talking about platform design, I think that is an important thing to consider, and I think it's going to create a different set of relationships and a different set of, depending on which, you put first in the chain. Well, I described this happened, and now we're going to go back over the record and apply XYZ rules to the record, and just sort of, and we can see who's ahead, what the score is after we've recorded all the events. Or do we know how we're keeping score first, and then marking our events, within that context? So, and that's, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I think that's another part to platform design.
Well, actually, Alan, I think it's pretty clear. For the events, you don't need the rules in advance. For the score, you do need the rules.
Do you want to expand on that a little more? Somebody?
Well, yeah. I just wanted to, before we go in ontological questions, which I don't think we're going to have, reached any conclusion on, I just wanted to ask you, Alan, how far this is from, where Eric and Art are going with the metacurrency project. Because what I'm interested in is figuring out what is the easiest thing we can put out there for people to implement that can become over time, something that can be used for open money and something can be used for non-monetary reputational systems like Foursquare, and other things like what the scope of metacurrency, which seems a little larger. So I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, for specific sort of computery questions, I'm definitely not the right person to ask about that. I think I can speak kind of generally about it and say that, certainly the idea of accommodating all different ways of keeping records of what happened and applying rules to what happens, whatever way you put the chain, whether the rules precede the events or the events precede the rules. I think metacurrency is very open to working with all of that. And I mean, in terms of, I like this, what you're talking about here, because it sounds, quite practical, for lack of a better word. And I mean, that's a really good thing. And, I think we would have to, where I see the difference in thinking is kind of, is like I said, around rules and events and data. I mean, for instance, I was thinking after being in San Francisco about these Nike shoes, that you hook up with your iPod and it tracks how far and fast you run and that sort of thing. And I was thinking, well, what about a health insurance company that would give you a discount the more you ran, right? Offered some kind of a discount because then that's there's a pretty obvious business case for that. And just kind of applied to the broader sort of healthcare debate that's going on in the country right now. So I mean, I think if you look at something like that from the point of view of events, descriptors, and rules, then it becomes quickly quite important to know the rules before you give the health insurance company your data, because you want to make sure that you're getting a fair shake. I mean, I think people have that. That's just my thing. Is there is that privacy concern, and people want to make sure that the records of their own interaction in the world are being viewed in a way that they have some sort of control over. Now, I mean, I don't see anything in here that's against that, because it does say that you can choose the third party that aggregates and accounts information. So I don't think that's necessarily against that. I'm just sort of exploring the territory.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Exploring the territory. I think you've gone out into the wilderness, far, far away from what I see is needed right now in our communities, and that's money. I mean, what our communities need, what the planet needs, are community currencies so that we can get to work doing the really important shit that needs to get done. Not wanking around with insurance companies. I mean, what's that about? I'm sorry, Alan, I just don't get it.
No, I mean, you guys with your Canadian health care.
Yeah, well, you see, nothing. The Nike shoes aren't going to solve that one for you, Alan, I'll tell you. Guillaume, Ernie and I were just identifying our sort of basic properties for a transaction record in open money. And they were, the first three were location, location, location. The first location being the sort of when, date, time identifier. The second location being the who, and the third location being the whom. Okay, so we had the event identifier, which would marry into your permalink URI. We had the who URI and the whom URI. Now, we didn't have the enum, which was basically sign, positive or negative, suck or blow, push or pull, because all of our declarations are basically from to. But it comes to the same thing. Your last two, the reference and the what, which varies, could include our requirements, which are that in the what there is a value and there is a system of record. So this one is $42 in the Portland Exchange or something. So what we're looking for in the what space are quite simply the value and the system of record against which it is aggregated. So I see this as entirely compatible with what we're talking about.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to build consensus on a very simple, minimalistic specification, because there are people that are building, that are interested about, social games like Foursquare, and they are not very significant, but they are important. They are being used. There are companies that are doing it, and there is interest on these. There is the whole community currency movement. There are the issues, Ernie, you talked about, and all of these are important. All of these are part of this discussion. What I'm trying to find is what can we do at the simplest? What can be the simplest thing we can do to enable all of that on the web today? I'm trying to put aside the privacy aspects, because I'm thinking that the easiest way to do this is to do it in a open data, public way, at least for the early adopters that we are all part of.
Well, I mean, if privacy does become a thing, it can be added later too. So. Yes,
it can be added later. But again, I'm trying to just focus on a very simple problem, and let's acknowledge something. Let's have mutual acknowledgement of something, and then plug the modules if you want for monetary, for reputation, for other things on top. And it's very similar to what Jeff did in his implementation of Regenerosity. You have a basic object, and then you have these extensions. You have the Let's extension. You have the various ways to extend that basic object. So I'm trying to build on that, but to build it in a way that is, that leverage the web infrastructure as we know it today, the blog infrastructure, the Twitter infrastructure, which work through the mechanisms I described. So, for instance, with another issue with the Regenerosity system is that you have signatures and you need to sign things. I want to put that aside. I want to assume that you have a web server. Your web server is secured with a certificate, so whoever comes to your website can assume that the data there is issued by the owner of this website, and if they trust that person, then they can use that data and build aggregations and build balances, etc. If they don't trust it, they can discard it. So I think it doesn't solve all the problems. Like what happens if a website disappears? It doesn't solve all these problems, which I think Eric and Arthur are trying to also address. But I think it provides something that could get some strong consensus in the next 6 months, the next few months, so that we could see some systems appearing that implement some of these patterns. So if there is, all I want is, and I think that's what I heard today, is from Michael and Ernie, and more from Michael, I guess, but this, on top of, if something like this was available, an accounting system for currencies for monetary could be built on top quite easily, and could play along with other kinds of systems.
Well, absolutely. I'm very happy with that. Sorry, Robert, is this Robert?
You can actually hear me. Oh, that's good. I wasn't sure whether it was working or not. But carry on, Michael.
Well, I was just going to confirm I'm totally in line with Guillaume's proposition here that we have a simple syntax for the origination of statements. These are, somebody says ABC, and this is a clear-cut way of managing those statements and associating them with their destination as well as their source. And it obviously can carry extensions into open money and multi-currency realms. So I'm really look forward to seeing more definition of this and practical implementations.
Yeah, well, I'm totally on board with where Guillaume's coming from with respect to how he's actually specified that. I'm not sure whether people have seen a few little chats that I've sent out in regarding REA, Resource Event Agent. Have people seen that?
No.
Okay, well, I'll explain what REA is. It's been around since about the early about 1980, I think it was. It's an ontological model that was defined by an academic called John McCarthy to replace the double entry accounting system. Now, it's basically, REA stands for Resource Events and Agents, and it's been used primarily to date in a number of Microsoft products for their ERP, sort of enterprise resource planning sort of stuff, and also in some of the UN EDIFACTS sort of systems. But it's a generalized accounting model that was sort of proved to be correct, etc., but for inertia reasons would never be implemented within the current accounting systems. The thing about REA is that it's actually quite well suited to a web-based sort of accounting model. So what Guillaume sort of put up here in terms of using URIs to identify things, the who, what, and when type of situation, each component of a real model can be expressed in that sort of way. And one of the key things, going back to a point that Michael raised before about an event, as in those basic properties, well, they basically describe a real event, and the critical component in this is that you have a relationship, or what is referred to as a duality, that maps both sides of the transaction. And this fits in with the Guillaume's model, which is effectively you've got the service providers sitting on either side of the area, and each one has their own record of what actually occurred, and through the URI addressing, they actually can match up very easily. So my point being here is that actually what's in the basic properties really actually describes the data format, and it doesn't actually have to be much more complicated than that. And in terms of enabling a system to work, the best example there to look at is something like the Atom format, which is used in a lot of blogging tools. I can add a lot more to this and things, but that's probably sufficient.
What format are you talking about at the end? Sorry, Robert?
The format, a data format, if it's to be of the web, let's say, so adhering to REST-based principles. The most important thing of any protocol design that you should be really looking at is actually the data format. So here what you've listed is the basic properties. So you've got a permanent URI that identifies the acknowledgement on the web, and that's effectively a URI for the event. Okay. Then you've got a URI for whom it should belong to, and that can be, for example, but there's other ways of doing this, an open ID. The same for the whom, and in fact, the whom actually becomes a duality in the REA model, and the what becomes the resource that we're talking about. And again, that can actually be identified by a URI. So the format itself doesn't actually do much.
Yeah, I just want to comment, say a few things. First of all, I'm quite familiar with the RIA model, and I agree that, I mean, it's been, I guess, maybe an unconscious inspiration. I've read about it many years ago, and I've actually picked up the white paper, the 10 or 20 page RIA white paper recently. I think the duality, as it's described in RIA, is that you have a transfer of resource. So the event is you have a transfer of resource from one agent to another agent, and in return you have a comparable accounting of a comparable flow, if you want, a reverse or inverse flow, which in the financial world or in the accounting world would be a flow of money. And these two would form the duality that is talked about in RIA. And what I'm describing as an acknowledgement here is actually just the two atoms, if you want, in the duality, which is simply I gave something and someone acknowledged they've received it. And for the duality, according to RIA, as far as I understood it, and I can recall it, there would have to be another transaction, another event record, if you want, that would say, okay, and in return, A gave something back to B, which is, let's say, another resource, control over another resource, or money, or whatever. So these two are, that's the duality. So, and I think what's interesting is, I mean, so in other words, the RIA, as far as money is concerned in RIA, the money is very commoditized. It's like something that you move around as you move resources in the other way. And I think that the whole model is very interesting. I'd recommend everybody to take a look at the white paper. Conceptually, it's brilliant. But it seems to me that, and with that, I hope we won't go in philosophical questions. But I really like when Michael talks about money as being a symbolic acknowledgement of a gift, and essentially being not a transfer of a commodity, money not being a commodity that you transfer back in exchange for an actual resource, but really being the symbol that you just acknowledge you've received something. So that's why I think the REA model is relevant, but my point, I guess, is that there is a continuum. You have the very soft acknowledgement, which is to say, okay, I got the resource, thank you, and I won't give you anything else in return but the fact that I acknowledge it, to a very hard currency, which is, well, I acknowledge, I give you back something, which is a promise from someone else to deliver that, the inverse flow. So that progression doesn't exist in REA, in the REA model. You see what I mean?
No, I think you'll find that actually does support that. It's just the way how you interpret a resource, because an acknowledgement is some sort of signal. And effectively, if you've got that duality there, that the existence of the dual side of the flow that REA incorporates indicates an acknowledgement. The fact that no resource is necessarily transferred, i.e. there's no amount, is neither here nor there. It's just how you're describing things. So I think you'll find that it actually fits in with Michael's definition there quite well.
Mm-hmm. Well, where should we go with this? It is now 1:15, and we've put down.
One of the places we could go with this is just to talk about this process itself, just for a couple of minutes to see whether or not people feel comfortable with it. Do we want to continue with this or go back to the earlier process?
You're talking about the
process,
communication. I'm talking about this, this conversation that we're having through Blog Talk Radio. How's that working for people?
Personally, I think it's fine. If we can make it easier for people to join, I don't mind people just kind of eavesdropping without joining the conversation. That's fine. I think it's a good opportunity for people new to the group to just join casually, maybe put their questions in the chat and not actually talk. So I like the idea, and I'm happy to continue that.
It seems to work all right for me once I figured out where best way of doing it. So it seemed to take a while for Blog Talk Radio to come up initially. It was just something to do with the internet I was having problems with. Otherwise, I would have joined a lot earlier.
Well, I think the technology will work better next time around. These things do. Ernie and I got in a bit of a crossover.
Michael, you are breaking up, and don't want to hear you anymore.
Okay, enough of me.
So next week, you will have a better mic.
Well, I'd like to. Need the better money to get the better mic.
I can spot you a mic.
Okay, well, we'll work it out.
Alan, you still there?
Yes, I am.
And how's this working for you?
It's all right. I mean,
you like this better or worse than what we had before?
Better or worse, meaning referring to the Skype or the whatever that other thing was we did last week?
Whatever other thing we did last week, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we did last week definitely had its advantages in terms of, but it was difficult to get a flow. So, I mean, I think it's kind of, if you have more than one person speaking at once, it is easier and clearer to understand multiple, but if you have only one person at once, you can understand more people, but if you have at once, you have more flow, but possibly less comprehension. So that's kind of the trade-off I see.
And on which side of that trade-off do you fall?
I don't know if I've decided yet. I'll have to.
Oh, for crying out loud, Alan, make a decision. God damn it.
I'm going to equivocate.
You filmmaker, you. Okay, so this seems to. Let's try it again next week.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to use that. Yes, and to go back to the content that we discussed, if any of you wants to send me comments so that I can improve this, I know I've talked to a few other people that are, I think, would be interested to join the discussion. So maybe next week I'll try to get other new people on the discussion to get this fleshed out. The other thing I want to, one place I would like to bring this is the microformats community, because they have quite a good process, and I think he would bring some new people as well in the conversation. So so that's kind of the direction I'd like to take. I guess the open question for me is whether this falls under open money foundation activity, or whether this is actually something that is not part of the what's the scope of open money? Does it fall into the scope of open money? Is it something that is compatible with open money? So that's kind of the open question that's there for me, and how we would call this.
Yeah, personally, I think we're talking about open money. I mean, you're interested in open money. Michael and I are interested in open money. Alan's interested in open money. So I think it's good to focus, but that doesn't mean we don't talk about other things. But I think a focus is necessary. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that there may be people who may tune into this thing and get through all the blather to this point to find out that they can check in at various other places, like the Open Money hashtag on Twitter. So that's one place they can find more talk about open money, metacurrencies, metacurrency hashtag on Twitter as well, and open money on Twitter, at open money. So anything else? Any other pointers that people want to put up here about, where people can find us and the things that we're talking about? I mean, Guillaume, you have a blog. You want to tell people how to find that?
For this weekly meeting on BlogTalkRadio?
No, just to flesh things out a bit, just in case there are people who pick up on this podcast and want to explore a little bit further. I mean, we definitely check out lets.net and openmoney.org, and Guillaume, your blog, perhaps, and The Money Fix, Alan Rosenblith, the film, The Money Fix. How about putting up some pointers?
Yeah.
.org.
Okay.
Money Fix.
So you're doing the credits. You're doing the credits part of the talk.
I guess so. Pointers to further exploration.
All right. Who's writing the
like
the end?
Rushkoff said the other day, he was on the radio. Somebody was asking for pointers. He said, Rushkoff, damn it. Rushkoff. Google Rushkoff. Right? And it's the same thing here. If anybody wants open money, then look around. It's all over the place. It's got to look for it. We don't have to be detailed. Frankly, I'm not interested in people who can't follow their own thread of research and get to where they got to go. We've got enough stuff out there, and it's really just an opportunity for people to pick it up and come. So,
I just want to come back to Guillaume's question about where he saw this stuff that he's been working on sitting under open money. I can't help but think that it fits more acutely with the metacurrency stuff than strictly open money. So maybe you can explain.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I really think open actually includes metacurrency. It seems to me metacurrency is a systemic approach to the representation of open money. So I don't see any conflict.
I agree with you there. What I'm getting at here, I guess, is that I'm just trying to understand the focus. What Guillaume's put up here in the discussion around metacurrency is, the microformats is obviously can go into quite a lot of technical detail about nuances of all of this, and it struck me that metacurrency was more of a technical focused project, home, rather than open money, which was more overarching.
Yes, I mean, my goal is to open the conversation to others, and part of the reason why Alan is on the call is to bridge these discussions with we cannot. It's hard to get everybody at the same time, but I'm planning to open this discussion to people that are not even part of metacurrency or open money, but that are interested to get people to do things, good things out there, get good actions done, motivate people to volunteer, to give to their community, to etc. using this type of accounting. So hopefully we can open that conversation to more people, not make it and get something out.
Yeah, and I mean, in that vein, Guillaume, I really want to give a big unqualified support for what you're doing and your approach here. I think it's very valuable.
Okay, you guys, we've got 2 minutes left for a peroration or whatever.
Well, I'm going to go, so thank you very much, everybody.
Covers it for me.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Guillaume.
Okay,
Thanks a lot, guys.
that's it. So we're just going to dump it, eh?
Yeah.
And leave a whole minute and a half left.
Well, we left them 30
of
minutes
blank space, a blank.
Oh yeah,
nothing.
I want to thank Harry Lime, the unknown soldier, whose continual holy grail against the. We're going to meet you on a bridge one day, Harry. Just a fool.
This is Harry. This is Harry Lime on Twitter. You're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, he's been listening in and putting a little bit of satire on the edge. Hear complex bickering amongst like-minded metrosexuals. Goldberg-esque vanities. Another one is, what's on second, who's on first? More flow, less comprehension. That's you, Alan. You're the more flow, less comprehension. Or vice versa. So thank you, Harry. We appreciate you. You are sweet. What a mind. So thank you, guys. Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye, guys.